What's up, guys? This is Christian Brindle with Six Figure Medicare Agent. Hope this video finds you doing well. And today we're going to be talking about how to sell over the phone and across state lines, okay? I'm a person that started out in this business doing exclusively face-to-face. Now I'm doing more and more virtual appointments and sales over the phone in other states like Texas, states like Florida, states like Colorado, Oregon, different places that I'm licensed in. And I'm selling both Medicare Advantage and both Medicare supplements. So let's start out by kind of what you need to know, what tools do you need to have, what's the best way for you to do this compliantly. Let's get right into this. So I got some interesting questions about this from several of you, so I'm going to be basically touching on these questions, and then I'm going to kind of get into my process. I had a question about state requirements. Is there specific state requirements that you must follow in order to be licensed and be able to do business in that state? And the answer is some of the states, and not every state is the same. So, for example, Virginia, for example, if you're a non-resident, has about I think it's a 15 or could be 25, Virginia Agent, forgive me, dollar continuing education fee every year to be licensed there as a non-resident. I don't know if that applies to resident licensees, but it does for non-resident licensees, and that's one we just picked up. The state of Idaho, for example, requires that we pay a fee every year to basically have our business registered as a corporation, but that's not required in every state. So every state's probably going to have their own criteria that you need to be aware of. The best way for you to know about it is if you pick up a license in a state, typically the insurance department will make you aware that, hey, this is also a requirement that we have, and you have this amount of time to get it fulfilled. And it's typically not very bad. It kind of just depends on the state. However, some states are worse than others. I was very highly recommended to stay away from Delaware from one of our FMOs because they had to pay so many fees and everything that it ended up being like $1,800 or something like that. It was something ridiculous. So that's about state requirements. It kind of just depends on the state. Different states have different requirements for you as a non-resident agent. The other thing that we need to talk about is appointment fees. Non-resident out-of-state appointment fees. So I'll use Florida as an example, because Florida is a state that many people end up getting licensed in. Florida, for non-residents, does have non-resident state appointment fees, and it's basically, I don't remember the exact dollar amount, but it's a specific dollar amount. I think it's either maybe $10 to $20 per county that you're going to do business in, which, you're going to do business in all counties, right? And it's per license that you hold. So if you pick up an individual license as well as a corporation license, if you own an agency, it's double the appointment fees. Now, most of the carriers in Florida will pay this for you, and this is specifically, on Medicare Advantage. Most of the carriers will pay this for you. But what we found out real fast was the biggest carrier, United Healthcare, would not. They basically took it out of my commissions in the form, at first I thought it was a chargeback when I first learned about this years ago. So there's non-resident appointment fees that you have to be aware of. Some carriers might pay it. Most, I think, typically will. But United Healthcare is an example of one that won't, because they just won't, for whatever reason. And they basically have you paid, and they take it out of your commission. So you have to be aware of non-resident appointment fees. Can really be a stinger, especially if you have multiple licenses in one area. Another thing, let's talk about multiple licenses in one area. Do you own an agency? Do you own a corporation? Do you need to get both licenses, your individual as well as your corporation license, in that particular state? Well, the answer to that is it depends on the carrier you're selling. Some carriers only require you to get the individual license and not the corporation, but they'll still pay commissions to your corporation. But other carriers require that you get both licenses. So it really kind of just depends on the carrier, you guys. Some will allow it, some won't. And it depends. If you're independent and you're selling all of the big dogs, you're selling United, Humana, Aetna, Anthem, all these big carriers, if they're located in that state, I should have you, probably one or not a couple of them will require you to get both licenses in that state. And you can't get an agency license as in a state as a non-resident if you don't have an individual license first, right? Somebody in the corporation has to have a license before the agency can get a license. So because there's one particular carrier that we have that requires we have both licenses in every state that we get in, we always pick up both licenses. I pick up my individual license, and then we pick up a Christian Brindle Insurance Services license. So keep that in mind. If you think you can get away with just selling one or two carriers that doesn't require you to get both licenses, maybe you can get away with it, but it's always better to have more options than less, in my opinion. It's tax deductible. It's not a big deal. Another thing we need to talk about is individual state taxes. Okay, this is a good question that I got. Do you have to file individual state taxes in each different state that you do business in? The short answer is no, you don't. And this is why. Your company is located, now this could vary based on who's watching this, but for me personally, my company is located in just outside of Salt Lake City, Utah. That's where our company is located. So that's where the business is. That's our resident state. That's where we do business. We do all the applications here in Utah, either over the phone or in person. And so we only file Utah taxes. You're not going to have to file taxes in all these different states, thank God. Just your home resident state, if that's how your agency and contracts are set up, okay? Now, what is a good process, guys, for you to do this? What kind of technologies do you need? Well, I've always found that you need screen sharing technology. We get it from our CRM. So basically the way it works is with our CRM, I can type in someone's email address. They'll get a link in their email address. They'll click on the link, and they'll open up this screen sharing software, and basically they can see my screen. And then I can go through drug comparisons with them. I can go through summary of benefits with them. I can go through anything I need to with them. I can go over different plan rates. I can go over compliant documents that they need to see on a particular plan. And I can do that appointment with them. If you're anything like me, and most of you probably are, I do better seeing things as well as hearing, not just hearing them and that's it. And our clients are like that too. Your clients feel that way too. Your clients want to see things. Need a screen sharing software. That's vitally, vitally important. And when you're done with appointments, and also when you're leading up to appointments, it's also good to email documents for them to look at in the meantime and have for their records. Okay, you don't just want to wait for the insurance company to send it to them in the mail. Make sure that you communicate with them heavily through email and screen sharing technologies. And a lot of people don't mind that. A lot of people actually would prefer that over you coming to their house, especially in this new 2020 decade, okay? Another thing you have to be aware of, especially if you're doing Medicare Advantage over state lines, is scope of appointments. So you basically have two options. Three, I actually should say. Your first option is you could mail them the scope and have them mail it back before your appointment. That would be compliant, right? Because you're supposed to get the scope signed before you do have a presentation, and you don't have the 48-hour rule anymore beforehand, thank God. But you still need to have the scope signed before you present compliantly a Medicare Advantage plan. So that's your first option. That's kind of a pain in the butt. The second option that I like a lot is a lot of carriers nowadays, like Humana, United, Mutual of Omaha, will allow you to do an electronic scope of appointment. For those of you who don't know, a scope of appointment is a form that basically says that they're agreeing to a meeting with a licensed insurance agent to discuss either Part D prescription drug plans or Medicare Advantage plans. Scope of appointments need to be kept on record for 10 years, no matter what. And you have to get one with every application. You have to get one actually before you even present one of those two products compliantly. So the best way I found, especially when you're doing across state lines, is to do an electronic scope of appointment. What this is they'll get an email in their email address from one of the carriers. A bunch of carriers have tools that let you do this nowadays, and they just electronically agree to a couple things depending on the carrier, and that's it. And it saves it on file for you. Print it off for your records. Print off the confirmation. That's going to be the easiest way. Another thing you can do is you can do a telephone scope of appointment where you do a 3-way conference phone call. Some carriers allow you to do that, not all. And they save it on file for you as well in that regard. So there's multiple ways you can get past the scope of appointment thing, but just don't forget about the scope of appointment. It's very vital. You can get in big trouble, and you need to make sure that you're doing it compliantly when you're doing across state lines. Now, you don't need scope of appointments to do Medicare supplements. It's easier to sell Medicare supplements over the phone than any other product, but sometimes you're going to have to do a Medicare Advantage plan. It helps to learn that area's hospital systems before you go into a state. I try to do that before I get licensed in any state. I research their hospital systems. I talk to people I know that are in the area, and that's going to help you out tremendously by knowing the systems a little bit. What's the biggest system? What ones do people care about? Who's good for what specialty? What's the best cancer hospital? What's the best rehab facility, et cetera, et cetera. And you're going to have an easier time selling Medicare Advantage plans in that particular market. But if you get in too many markets, it can get overwhelming and it can be very difficult. So take that with a grain of salt, I suppose, everybody. How do you get in front of these people? The same way you get in front of people now to do face-to-face appointments, Facebook ads, buy leads, content marketing, building a brand where they're contacting you. I do that quite a bit. Referrals in other states. The only difference is you're not meeting with them in person, you're meeting with them virtually. When I lived in Florida is when I really started doing this because I was getting a lot of referrals and also people contacting me from Utah because of marketing we were doing. And we started doing a ton of phone enrollments. And I was in Florida, they were in Utah. It's not a big deal. Once you kind of get over it, the clients don't mind it. The clients in a lot of cases actually prefer it, you guys. You don't need to do anything special or fancy or anything that you don't do to get a home appointment or a face-to-face appointment to get an appointment with someone over the phone, okay? Just make sure you're being compliant about it. Like I mentioned on this, you're going to need software. You're going to need tools. I don't think you need much more than, working email, screen sharing technology, access to tools that allow you to compare prescriptions, look up doctors and hospitals and those kind of things. And probably a good CSG tool can't hurt either. I get mine through Medicare Agent Training, Christopher Westfall's website. I use that religiously, which it's a great site for anybody that doesn't know about it. I pay $49 a month for it right now. It might be different depending on when you enroll. But yeah, I mean, with the CSG quoter, you can see any Medicare supplement rate in any zip code in the country. It costs more to get it nationwide than just in your area, so it depends on where you're located and those kind of things. Or you can just get it from your FMO. I mean, we have a CSG quoter tool also from our FMOs, but it only shows certain carriers that they carry. They don't carry all the carriers that I have, et cetera, et cetera. So I like Medicare Agent Training because it shows me everything. I like their CSG quoter for that reason, you guys. But that's all you need. Don't make this too complicated. It's not so hard. It's not so intimidating. You guys can do this. And any additional questions that you have on this topic, there's not a whole lot to go into it, really. But any additional questions that you have about this topic, please feel free to drop them down in the comment section. I will answer every single one of them personally. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe for future six-figure Medicare agent content. And hope this video finds you starting off your year in plenty of abundant success and smashing through your goals beyond your wildest dreams. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.